that a lot of our primary data, it is still misses the gender lens. So majority of these large scale surveys, they usually record the household information. They usually record the household's information under one respondent's name, which is usually the male. So women's experiences with energy, their experiences with health or technology, they often do not get recorded as separate data points.
Greetings. Welcome to the world of Om Share Foundation. Representing Om Share Foundation, it's A4G Impact Collaborative. I, Aarti Ahuja, am delighted to invite you to our podcast series, Governance Dialogues Shaping the Future of AI. The A4G Impact Collaborative is a global alliance launched by the Om Share Foundation under thought collaborative leaders across various professions and thinking who are shaping the AI landscape with Swadharma and Swabhav that will ensure AI becomes a force for equity, compassion, and sustainability. A4G unites experts, institutions, and policymakers to co-create open solutions across three key domains: AI for sustainability, driving ESG transformation and circular economy adaptation with data-driven insights; AI for mental well-being, scaling supportive AI human frameworks for accessible mental health; and governance of AI, developing ethical, human-centered, and inclusive governance frameworks. We hosted our first event, A4G Horizon Responsible AI Symposium, in partnership with Delhi Technological University on 16th April this year. Taking the collective forward with our women-led dialogue today, we have with us some interesting speakers and contributors who will help us understand the importance of this new age of AI along with the role that we as women play. Dr. Maria Carnovale. She's a teaching assistant professor on public policy at UNC North Carolina. Maria has been at the University of North Carolina with a PhD in public policy from Duke University and economics training from University of Boca. She examines how policy frameworks can enable public interest technology to maximize well-being while protecting individuals and communities. Her research has focused on technological governance and human rights, including AI ethics, digital platforms, and smart infrastructure. She previously served as the Vice President at the Institute for Technology and Global Health and as a Technology and Human Rights Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School. Her work has been published in outlets including States and Other Issues. And today we have Preksha Sharma also with us, who is an independent researcher. Her earlier stint at IMD Bhopal has given her a lot of gravitas and also a wide range of experience. She holds a Master's of Public Policy from IIT Delhi and is a teacher for education of governance. She has focused on building equitable technology ecosystems in education, including partnerships with organizations like PI Jam Foundation and Government of Telangana to integrate AI and innovation into Indian schools. She conducts workshops in education policy frameworks, including NEP 2020 and AI in education, working to make technological education accessible across diverse educational landscapes. Why I say that this is a women-led, powerful stage today for us, because even our moderator today is a young student woman, Ms. Gungun M, and she's studying MA in Public Policy at the St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. I welcome you both, Maria and Preksha, and also to Gungun. Please take it forward, Gungun.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. It is quite an honor to have Ms. Preksha and Dr. Maria for today's Governance Dialogue Shaping the Future of AI. I am Gungun Mahapadra and I'm pleased to moderate today's discussion. In today's episode, Global Women Building Governance of AI, we aim to explore women's voices in AI governance and how gendered experiences can inform and perhaps make this technology inclusive in the future. And in the forthcoming years, it should also be embedded in policy regulation and in the design of AI. So I would like to begin by setting the ground and understanding all the lived experiences of both our panelists today. So, Dr. Maria, I would like to begin with you. So, given your expertise in public policy and human rights, I would like to know, how do you see gender intersecting with AI in the space of governance? Ma'am, you're muted.
I think I need to unmute. Yes. I failed to do the one thing that I absolutely didn't had to do. Anyways, sorry. This is a great question. Thank you, Gungun. Um, so certainly there are very prominent examples as to how AI system perpetuate some form of gender biases in access to opportunities and essential services. Now, if we think about discrimination, we can really divide it into two camps, direct and indirect discrimination, and AI can have an impact on both sides. So direct discrimination takes place when people are treated differently based on some personal characteristics or choice. So to give you an example, in a few decades ago, it was perfectly reasonable to prevent women from filling some important job roles based on the idea that they would never be as dedicated to their jobs as to their family responsibilities. Now, the picture is much different, and this explicit form of discrimination is less common and often illegal. However, when AI systems enter the picture, picking up on these forms of direct discrimination can be harder because of the black box nature of many machine learning systems, where gender could be a variable that is used to make predictions and inform decisions, or in its absence, the system can pick up on some of its proxies, like names. Now, an example of that is the Austrian Public Employment Service that used a automated system to inform its decision over how to reintegrate job seekers into the labor market and predict their success. This system drew wide criticism over the fact that women often received lower scores, meaning that they were predicted to be less likely to find employment in the short term. And the variable obligation of care was noted to apply only to women. And that led the authors of the studies to challenge the idea that these systems were neutral and objective, but they just approximated the labor market and the value-laden choices of system designers. Now, indirect discrimination instead is way more subtle. It's a situation where, on paper, people are treated equally, so the same rules apply to all, but the rule ends up creating a disadvantage for some groups. Now, the book Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez documents a lot of such examples where data-driven systems fuel diverging outcomes for women. And a prominent one in the book is the fact that medical data bias leads to worse healthcare outcomes for women in the diagnosis of many diseases, including heart disease. And in her book, she argues that the reason behind that is that the data collection process often sees women as a residual category. So a woman is, being a woman means not being a man. And therefore, the data collection processes are often structured around males, missing some of the nuance that would support the opposite gender. Even though women make up 49.7% of the global population, according to 2024 World Bank data. Now, fortunately, thanks to studies like these ones, science can move forward and provide new solutions that overcome these drawbacks. And for instance, very recently, some studies were sponsored to develop AI-powered sensor to monitor for health and lung-related symptoms with separate models for male and females.
So now my next question would be to Ms. Preksha, as she is working at the intersection of AI, public health, and policy innovation. The same question, Preksha, to you, that how do you see gender biases and gender roles specifically in an Indian context shaping the structure of governance and policy research here?
Ma'am, you're muted.
Again, I also ended up making the same. All right, okay. So, Aarti, could you please repeat your question?
The
Uh,
question is that how do you find the gender bias working in the Indian context for a governance of AI, and also what have been your challenges while working in the intersection of policy making and healthcare?
Okay. All right. So thank you, Aarti, for your question. And thank you, Maria. I think I completely agree with your points. But I would like to add on by sharing an on ground perspective here in India, which is one major thing that I've noticed, which is similar to like how Maria has shared, that a lot of our primary data, it is still misses the gender lens. So majority of these large scale surveys, they usually record the household information. Sorry, they usually record the household's information under one respondent's name, which is usually the male. So, women's experiences with energy, their experiences with health or technology, they often do not get recorded as separate data points. So even before artificial intelligence or any technology will start learning from this data, half of the story in the data is already missing. And one more issue that I see here is also that of accessibility and education. Um, AI tools and the learning around them, they are still concentrated in urban, in English speaking policy circles. So we need simple interfaces, we need local language support, and we need comfort on ground so that our women researchers, women community, and workers, they can confidently use these tools. And I also want to add that I don't see artificial intelligence as a threat by default. I also see it as a feedback amplifier, but we can only amplify what we choose to hear. And if we want governance, if we want it to be truly representative, it's crucial that we need to bring women's voices into the system right from the point where data is collected as a design principle, just like how Maria stressed on these points.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insights. So, my next question is to both Ms. Preksha and to Dr. Maria. So, as you guys rightly pointed out, the feedback amplification can become put forward the rhetoric of, say, the male gender. Because again, from what research I did before this discussion, about 44% of AI systems they target female users, but when it comes to AI policies, and in terms of giving them space, only 30% of AI workers, or in terms of the inputs that are being given in the AI sector, it comes from women. So, based on this data point, I would like to bring the question that from both your fields, what is the biggest risk that AI poses to women in governance specifically?
I can go first if you want, or Preksha,
Sure,
do you want
sure.
to jump in?
No, sure, you can go first.
So, from my perspective, I guess there are a lot of risks that AI brings to the table. One of the things that I've been thinking about more often recently is the idea that, to me, there are two goals that are often conflated. And the first goal is the representation of women in AI development. And the second goal is the solutions to problems like algorithmic bias or data-driven bias. And they are both important. One can argue that they are both important, but in my opinion, they should remain independent. And very often, instead, I see them conflated as, gender representation in positions of leadership or development of AI systems directly create less gender bias embedded in the data, in the algorithmic systems, as well as a host of other issues like job place discrimination, harassment, etc. Now, while that might be true, if we conflate those two goals, we risk that we put the responsibility for the solution of such a complex and systemic issues that is very much embedded in our society, like algorithmic discrimination or algorithmic bias, on the shoulders of a handful of women who happen to be in position of power and authority in those settings. And that essentially risks to set them up for failure. And what I'm concerned is that that failure then undermines the legitimacy of the first objective, that of increasing representation, gender representation. And I think we can only break that cycle by keeping those objectives as separate, equally important, but independent.
I absolutely agree with what Maria shared here. And I would like to add by also sharing that I believe that the real change is not simply about using this technology, but the real question is also about how are we using this technology? Whether it is helping our public systems become more human, more inclusive, and more responsive. And if yes, then we are talking about something transformative. So I would like to share something from my experience working in policy evaluation. I believe that I could not address the second part to your first question on the challenges that women face. So I would like to share that in these large scale government programs, not just in renewable energy, but across education, health, and social welfare, these programs, they already generate an enormous amount of data. We have community level information, we have local feedback, behavioral trends, reports flowing in from across the country. And because most of these programs, they are implemented through what we can call as a cascading model. There is central guidance, there is state adaptation, and then there's district execution. A lot of this information stays unused because field projects, they work on tight timelines, and much of the data, it never gets processed. So I believe that artificial intelligence, these tools, they can practically help us change that. And I call that as a listening governance, a participatory governance, where feedback will travel upward. It will travel in a usable form, and it will inform policies in real time. Before coming to the challenges, I would like to stress on the powerful role of artificial intelligence first. I see that it can be in capacity building of our public institutions, because in many government departments, the same offices, they handle everything from communication campaigns to ground level implementation. And AI enabled automation can reduce their burden. It can improve transparency. It can actually make everyday governance more efficient. A good example of this is from Maharashtra, because just last month, the Nagpur Municipal Corporation, they launched a chatbot called as AI Mitra, which supports both English and Marathi speakers for civic services, queries like birth certificates. And so it is helping citizens get their work done round the clock without actually the need to physically visit the offices. And this actually shows that it can help enhance access. It can reduce the waiting time. It can make service delivery efficient, especially when we talk about women, when we talk about our older people and vulnerable populations. But having said that, I want to be clear that this transformation only works if it is inclusive. And that brings me to this question on the challenges that women face in contributing to AI policy research. I feel that many young women, especially who are from tier two towns and from rural areas, they have limited access to mentorship and professional networks where these AI policy debates happen. There is also this misperception of the field as purely technical. It is often seen as purely a computer science domain. So if one is not from computer science, this can create an unnecessary, what we can call as a gatekeeping effect. But in reality, AI policy is deeply interdisciplinary. It needs gender, it needs public health, it needs community insights. And women researchers, I feel that they understand how policies play out on the ground, but they face a limited recognition in technology policy networks because these networks largely remain very male dominated and they're very urban centered. So for me, this is not about lack of competence. It is the need to redesign how expertise is valued. And and it's not about replacing humans. It would be more about amplifying human judgment, amplifying empathy and inclusion. We can definitely make our governance faster and fairer, but only if we'll design it for diversity, and we ground the technology in lived experience, especially women's voices.
Uh, Thank you,
This
ma'am, for that.
brings this brings us to a very interesting observation that I just made while both of you were speaking, that as our discussion is grounded in being more local, having more local relevance and contextual for our cultural spaces, the challenges and the risks that we face across the globe as women are more and more similar at a very ground level. So, taking from there, as Preksha, you know what, Preksha? Your next question was around all of this only, asking you to elaborate on the challenges, the risk, and the importance of bringing AI and making it all inclusive. So, as you have already answered it, flowing ahead, I would request Gungun to ask Maria the question that's been on our heads for a long time.
Thank you, ma'am. And Ms. Preksha, you have definitely addressed a huge part of our inclusion aspect of building feminist AI governance. So I will go to Dr. Maria. So I would like to know, Dr. Maria, that what does a gender responsive AI policy look like, especially, when we will be practicing it? And can you maybe substantiate it with a couple of examples or institutions that have probably already implemented policies of this nature?
Yeah, sure. So a gender responsive AI policy is an initiative or a regulatory framework that explicitly try to address gender equity. And these policies often address either the data collection process or the auditing of the social impact of an AI system. Just to provide a couple of examples, the UNESCO recently released a red teaming playbook to equip organizations, policymakers, and civil society with tools to test generative AI applications for harmful biases in general, but with a specific focus on gender biases. And this is an example of a gender-responsive AI policy that focuses on that auditing piece of the social impact of AI applications. Now, some gender-responsive AI policies instead focus on the data collection piece. So, for instance, many countries use machine learning methods to predict indices of wealth from geospatial data. And they use those predictions to inform or to target some anti-poverty programs. The organization AidData, in collaboration with the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, tested some of those models in Ghana. And what they show is that they are very accurate in predicting family wealth for male-headed households. But the accuracy is much lower for female-headed households, potentially leading to anti-poverty programs that are mismatched to the needs of women who are head of their families. And they show that the difference is in part as a result of the underrepresentation of female-headed households in the training data sets. So gender-responsive AI policies would be to increase that representation from a data collection point of view.
So, if you don't mind me asking a follow-up question about this. So, it is very interesting to see that something of this sort again benefited men and male-led households more than female-led households. And a lot of the cultures that we see, especially in African societies, they are very centric, very matriarchal in nature, if we see. So also a lot of these nations, they get aids from a lot of Western countries. And currently there are a lot of aid programs that are stopping because of the change. So I just wanted to know your opinion that how is distribution of aid also affecting it potentially? Because again, if the data in itself is sort of exacerbating this inequality, and again, aid is not reaching the people that it is supposed to. So, just like briefly, if you could tell, how would you mitigate it from your perspective?
That's a great question. And I guess that I would go back to what Preksha was saying earlier, where so data collection processes are essentially an example of storytelling. As you're collecting data, you're collecting stories. And the stories that you decide to collect shape what we do in the future, like stories, narratives, have always shaped how we interpret our society. And so what we decide to include in that data collection process informs our vision, becomes our vision of the world. And this is what these AI systems are doing now. But in the past, deciding to recollect and tell the stories of certain groups over others fulfill the same function because it influences the way we see and shape the world. And so ultimately, it's about maintaining that balance in the stories that we tell and the data that we collect. In terms of the availability of aid, clearly aid funding for these projects will become in the next year much more competitive. And so leveraging these breadth in the data collection process will become more important because of the more competitive aid environment.
Thank you, ma'am. So for the crosstalk, Aarti ma'am would like to ask a question to both of you.
So, as I was hearing both of you speak, it seems, as always in the world, the narrative lies with the women and what folklore we want to create in this new age with ancient wisdom available to us across cultures. I see this new kind of interdisciplinary collaboration opening up that both of you have emphasized on. So I would like to give Preksha a chance first to answer this, that how can interdisciplinary collaboration, while knowing that the gender disaggregated insights that we have available today can actually help divide the gap between the policy analysts, the legal experts, and all the other people, and especially women who develop the voice of AI ahead and making it more innovative and inclusive, as both of you have been stressing upon.
Thank you, Aarti, for your question, and I think I can connect your question on this interdisciplinary collaboration back to what I mentioned earlier about listening governance, and this collaboration is, I think, it is what allows us to move to the next step, which we can call as co-creating governance. And that is when technology systems, when artificial intelligence systems, they become more innovative, they become more inclusive, because they will not be built in isolation, but they will be built in conversations. And I think that it is one important piece in making technology systems, or if we talk about artificial intelligence or any technology, truly inclusive, is how we bring different worlds together: policy, technology, people. I've also seen that whenever policy analysts, data scientists, legal experts, they sit at the same table, the conversations, they immediately change. The questions start to become more human. A technologist might ask questions on process automation, while a policy researcher might ask questions on ethics, and that's how the inclusion begins here. And in India also, I think we are also starting to see more of these collaborative approaches. Ministries, they're working with startups for local language, language local tools, or think tank researchers, and they are contributing to ethical technology guidelines. But what I feel is still missing is enough representation from the social sector side, especially women researchers and practitioners who understand communities. And I also see this collaboration is not purely technical, but I think it's also about justice, because policies land differently on different communities. So if any technology like artificial intelligence, it is influencing our decisions, then in order to for inclusion to truly work, we need to make sure that there is recognition justice. Every voice deserves to be visible in our data. There's participation. Communities, especially women's voices, they must help shape solutions. And distribution justice, where we also need to ensure that the benefits of this technology, it must reach everyone. And that is when the technology is going to serve the society. And
So,
I would love
Maria,
to know Maria's.
So
Yeah, thank you.
Before Maria, you speak something, I would like to reinforce one fact. The heart of what we are building at A4G is exactly what Preksha said, bringing people of all voices and diversities together and giving them a platform. And Maria, with your experience across so many areas of working, how do you see that creating that ancient wisdom art in modern technology, with women narratives being an influencing area? How do you see that?
So I really appreciated what Preksha shared, and I cannot agree more. I think it's very important to have these different voices around the table, and it does create a different energy. The discussion goes in different directions when that happens. It's very palpable when you're part of that discussion. And kudos to you guys for creating that platform. What I also think it's very important, though, if I can piggyback on that, is to remember that that conversation also needs to be global in nature, I think. Like we need information from different communities around the world to coordinate a response, a policy response to the risks that the benefits and the risks that this technology poses. The impact of AI is global, and without an international dialogue and coordination, AI governance might ultimately create some frictions. Now, in the past, we have seen examples of that international coordination, how that international coordination can look like, from the Atoms for Peace conference in 1958 to discuss nuclear research, and how to control that research so that it didn't lead to nuclear proliferation, or the international summits on the human gene editing, where scientists and policymakers establish and monitor guidelines for the safe use of recombinant DNA technology. So there are examples of these types of effort in other scientific fields. Whether this is something feasible in the current for AI in the current political climate, I don't know, but we all have the responsibility to make it possible. And again, thank you for facilitating a dialogue where it's a step in that direction.
So this brings me to a personal question that I'd like to ask both of you as a researcher in the AI space and a psychologist, that how do we ensure that there is more women representation? Because Preksha mentioned in one of her dialogues that it becomes segmented and it becomes more elitist and classist. So how can we make sure that women and other indigenous groups and also vulnerable groups are more represented? Maria, first let Preksha speak, and then you can give us a global perspective.
Thank you, Aarti, for that question. I think we already talked about the challenges that
We just lost you,
women
Preksha, for
face.
2 seconds.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Aarti, thank you for your question. And I think we already talked about the challenges that women are facing, and then after that, we also, like Maria spoke about, specifically about how women's voices are not being included in our data collection efforts. But if you ask me, what can we make sure, I would to make sure that there's more women representation, I would like to talk about this from a policy perspective, from my experience, and but I would also like to challenge a trend. In India, if we'll have to come up with such a policy to make sure that there are more women in this field, then it need not be another policy fellowship. It need not be an internship or certificate programs, because we have all seen how of those often they end up costing young people money or giving them unpaid work with little real mentorship in return, and that burden falls heaviest on women, especially on platforms, on some professional platforms where there's so much noise but there's very little genuine access. Instead, I would mandate fair hiring and equal pay audits for every AI research lab, every startup and government project in India. No more hiring for diversity, I mean, just for the optics. Every team building artificial intelligence or any technology should have real representation, not just AI policy, but every woman's contribution. It must be visible, it must be credited, whether she's a coder, a researcher, or a research field officer gathering the data that AI learns from. So I would require every major AI mission in India, from infrastructure to education to deployment, to report not just how many women participated, but what influence they had on the outcome. Because numbers, I believe that they'll tell us who was in the room, but the impact tells us that who shaped the room. And finally, I would also love to add, I would bring a regulatory oversight to ban exploitative pay for certificate programs, unpaid fellowships, or things which are posing as opportunities. Because if we want women's talent, then we'll have to pay for it. We'll have to respect it. We'll have to publish it. As women's influence on any technology, it must not depend on paying for a seat at the table, but it is also on their competence, their courage, and the impact that they create. So inclusion is not only about who gets to learn, but it will also be about who gets to lead and who gets credited when the progress is made.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, as someone who is studying and participating in the social sector and pursuing an education in public policy, I felt very seen. And I believe a regulatory oversight is essential because, as you had mentioned, a lot of people from tier two cities, from the rural background, who can very much become a very important voice in the development of AI in the space of governance and in the space of research at large, they are very much excluded from this and they're having to pay for this opportunity. I have seen it firsthand. And someone who has lived in an urban landscape, I very much understand that. So I really appreciate this insight. And I would like to now bring in Dr. Maria. As she had mentioned, it's very important to see the global standards that are needed for bringing this sort of inclusive representation. So, in the age of globalization, Dr. Maria, what do you believe is the best way to bring in women into this conversation, to bring women in inclusive policy making?
Yeah, I mean, much of what I would say, I think Praksha covered these very effectively. So it's important to have oversight. It's important to make sure that it's not just about a head count of how many women are in the room, but also how many people are leading the discussion and are influencing the final decision. Very well put. I would also argue that a lot of these issues had to do with things that happen outside of a boardroom or a decision-making process. So very often women enter the labor force, start their career, and then they find a ceiling to that career. And that is often to do with stuff that happens outside of their job. And so promoting a woman's career is also about promoting like a balance between work and family life. And we need policies that are outside of the labor space to be able to support that. Like childcare needs to be affordable, elder care as well, because otherwise we end up losing those women's voices in the process. So thinking about what happens on the job, but also what happens supporting women outside of the job with effective policies to support their families.
Yes, ma'am. I absolutely agree with you. And a lot of Nordic nations have very much established that. But again, one aspect of it is that a lot of their population is a major tax-paying nation. So all these nations, they can very much ensure these safeguards, proper maternity leaves, creche, and even leaves for the male parent who has to help in the caregiving process. I think those insights are something people have to very much learn about. And yes, they will very much inform this entire process of making AI policies that are inclusive and they're giving a space to women. And I would like to finally hand over Aarti ma'am to ask one final question to both of you.
Thank you, Gungun. And my final question today comes from this realization and understanding as I've been listening to both of them and interacting with both of them. We are standing at this fascinating intersection today. While we are working on the cutting edge AI applications, we are also bringing in inclusivity and more representation, not only at a local level in India, but also at a global level. So the question is to both of you. If you could send one message to young policy professionals, data scientists, civil servants, and social not media influencers, but thought influencers and women in these roles who will be making governance of AI decisions over the next decade. What would it be? What mindset shift is the most urgent as we navigate the future of AI as women?
I could share if Maria would like to go first.
You can go first. I can
Okay, all right, okay,
follow.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Aarti, for that question. I think it's something, what you have asked is something very, very close to my heart. And I've strongly believed that confidence is it's not a personality. People often say, wear your confidence. It is like an accessory. Uh, but real confidence, it doesn't come from a blazer or a bold lipstick. I'm sure I would love a good blazer and a bold lipstick, but it comes from knowing your craft, whether you are in STEM, whether you're in design, fashion, social work, business, or public policy. You don't have to look like an expert. It's a kind of confidence that is inbuilt and it is not worn. So that one message for me would be building competence. And one of my biggest inspirations is India's first field marshal, Sam Manekshaw, who was a legendary military leader. And he said that professional competence, it is the bedrock of leadership. And that is true whether you're building AI systems, whether you're designing policies, or you're teaching a classroom. So, to every young woman listening, no matter what field you're in, uh, build your skills, because AI governance, it needs people who understand society. It needs people who understand human behavior, communities. It's not just technology or code. But if you love technology, pursue it boldly. If you love policy, pursue that fearlessly. Take on projects, volunteer, learn by doing, because you should not be just collecting certificates or degrees. But I think even though they matter, you should be collecting professional competence. Would be my message.
Maria?
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that. Like, definitely, I think we live in a society where there is an oversupply of confidence and an undersupply of competence. So an important task is to rebalance that. Um, if I had a magic wand, I would say that the one thing that I would like to see, and the where I hope that especially a younger generation are inspired to lead, is to challenge the idea that AI needs to go fast. AI research needs to go fast. AI needs to reach the market fast, and that winner takes all nature of this race to AI. What I would like to see is regulation that slows down the pace at which applications powered by data-driven algorithms reach the market. So just to give you an example, when pharmaceutical companies develop a new drug, they need to go through thorough testing according to standards that are explicitly set by government agencies before they can get approval to reach the market. And we want to have medical drugs that can cure diseases, but we also recognize the risk of having poorly tested drugs reaching the market with creating potential harms. Now, arguably, data-driven systems have the same potential. They are now ubiquitous around us, and they affect most aspects of our lives, from if we're considered for that job or for that mortgage, or even if we're considered potential criminals. Now, data-driven systems can be very useful, but at the same time, they can be harmful and they should be tested in a way that is systematic and with common regulated standards before deployment to make sure that the probability of harm is minimal.
Thank you, ma'am. Especially the remarks that you made about this winner takes it all attitude that has very much permeated into the very fabric of competition right now, where there are people who apply for 300 to 400 jobs and they still don't hear back from organizations. And as we see a lot of the AI workforce sort of replacing people who have tenure, who have experience. Before I got a chance to be part of this discussion, I very much felt pessimistic about what are my prospects after graduating. But this very insightful discussion and the takeaways from two experts, such as yourself and Ms. Preksha, I am leaving with a much more optimistic understanding of what AI can do for governance. Again, a very skillful triangulation and use of AI and a proper testing model is what is going to make it a much more inclusive part of the daily fabric of society. Because again, changes are inevitable, whether it was industrialization, whether it was the IT boom, it was the dot-com revolution, and currently in the context, the incorporation of AI. As it was mentioned by Geoffrey Hinton, who invented AI himself in the beginning at the nascent stages, he had developed AI to help his child is who undergoes autism. So he had mentioned that I want it to be used for public welfare. I never wanted it to be used for anything such as, in the spaces of military use. And again, as we head into a generation where AI is very much going to be a part of our everyday lives, it's very important that the testing, the trial, the error, and the inclusion of opinions, especially of women who form 49% of the population and who will be growing over a period of time, all your insights have really made me change my outlook and understanding around AI. And I very much agree that insights from women, insights from various parties, insights from various people from various stratas of society, it is their participation in the boardrooms and outside the boardrooms that is going to determine how we perceive AI and how AI will be used for welfare. And yes, I would very much like to. I would have continued this discussion further, but as we are at a lack of time, I would like to hand over to Aarti ma'am for proposing a formal vote of thanks.
Well, this is not the end. The Omshia Foundation A4G Impact Collaboratives universe is expanding every day. And more about in Preksha's words as we listened in today. We extend our gratitude to the team behind this podcast, our Sankles, the directors and other advisors of A4G Impact Collaborative, and deep gratitude to Maria and Preksha for wearing their hearts on their sleeves in this discussion and sharing and resonating with our A4G heart, the ancient wisdom with modern technology. Their perspectives underscore the importance of representation, collaboration, and responsible policy design, weaving women's narrative into the very fabric of technological evolution. And hey, lived example, our young moderator today is inspired and looking forward to her new integration with AI. These are not merely voices at the table, these are architects of a new folklore, one where code carries the weight of care, where algorithms remember what patriarchy has historically erased, and where data becomes a vessel for dignity rather than dominance. In the ancient tradition of passing wisdom through stories, we face a profound question: what kind of ancestors will we be to the AI systems of tomorrow? Will we encode the old hierarchies, or will we dare to program liberation? Will our machines inherit our silences around gender, caste, and inequality, or will they learn from the radical act of inclusion? Technology, after all, is not neutral, as Maria and Preksha both highlighted it. It is a mirror we hold up to ourselves, and in that reflection, we must see not just who we are, but what we have the courage to become. At Omshia Foundation, through A4G Impact Collaborative, we believe when women's lived experiences, their labor, their knowledge, their survival strategies become cultural wisdom embedded in AI governance, we just don't build better societies and systems, but we've built a better community and humanity altogether. So, with this, I believe that we build a more honest civilization. This is the work of our times, and this technical folklore with the philosophy that, as Preksha and Maria both mentioned, that with inclusive representation, philosophy, and a poetic resonance of justice, and the feminist insistence that no innovation is truly intelligent if it doesn't serve the most marginalized amongst us, brings us to an end of episode 4. Stay tuned for episode 5 of the Governance Dialogues, where we'll continue to explore the future of AI and its impact on society. One conversation, one story, one act of radical inclusion at a time. Thank you.